The spreadsheet didn't lie. Column E, row 47, Thursday night when I was supposedly working late on the Henderson audit. Bellissimo's Ristorante, the kind of place with valet parking and wine lists thicker than my tax code manual. $237 on our joint card. I stared at that line item like it was written in a language I almost recognized but couldn't quite translate. The charge timestamp read 8:43 p.m. I'd gotten home at 9:15 that night, found her in pajamas watching some reality show, hair wet from what she said was an early shower. She'd kissed my cheek and asked how the audit went, her voice carrying that practiced concern wives develop after 7 years of marriage. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I sat in my home office now, the blue light from my monitor painting shadows across stacks of client files and my framed CPA certificate. My coffee had gone cold an hour ago. Outside, the neighborhood was doing its Tuesday morning routine, sprinklers on timers, someone's dog barking at the garbage truck, the ordinary rhythm of a life I thought I knew. But that charge sat there in the export file like a thumbtack facing up on a dark floor. I could feel it even when I wasn't looking at it. My wife told someone I never checked the credit card. The problem was, I'm a financial analyst. Numbers are the only language I've ever trusted to tell the truth. My name is David Chen. 34 years old, partner at Morrison Associates, the kind of accounting firm where billable hours matter more than birthdays and tax season turns men into ghosts who forget what sunlight feels like. I met Rebecca at a corporate mixer 7 years ago, back when I still attended those things. She worked in pharmaceutical sales, had a laugh that made conference room small talk feel genuine, and ordered whiskey when everyone else was nursing white wine. We got married at a vineyard upstate, kept it small, promised each other we'd never become the couple who stops talking. For a while, we weren't. Our house sits in Maple Ridge, one of those developments where every third home shares the same floor plan and the HOA sends violation notices if your grass gets too long. It's a good neighborhood. Safe. The kind of place where people wave from driveways and someone always organizes the Halloween parade. We've got a 2-car garage I've been meaning to organize for 3 years, a kitchen with granite counters Rebecca picked out, and a guest room we keep saying will convert into something useful. On paper, we look like we were doing everything right. I've always been the money person. Not controlling, just careful. It's what I do for a living, after all. I set up our accounts with the same attention I give to client portfolios. Joint checking for household expenses, individual savings for personal spending, a shared investment account that auto-deposits every month. We'd agreed on it early, the kind of financial transparency that prevents the fights other couples have. She had full access to everything. So did I. Trust through mathematics, I used to joke. She'd roll her eyes and call me her beautiful nerd. The thing about being a financial analyst is you develop instincts. When numbers don't align, when patterns shift, when data whispers something the surface can't explain. I've caught embezzlement schemes, identified fraud, spotted discrepancies that executives tried to bury in footnotes. It's not magic. It's attention. You learn to see what doesn't fit, what disrupts the established rhythm. And for the past 3 months, our personal finances had been humming a tune I didn't recognize. It started small. ATM withdrawals and amounts that didn't match her usual habits. Rebecca typically used cards for everything, racked up points, treated cash like an inconvenience. But suddenly there were $80 pulls, $120 pulls, always on weekday afternoons. Then restaurant charges at places we'd never discussed. Not our anniversary spots, not the Thai place we ordered from every other Friday. New places. Expensive places. Places with romantic names and Yelp reviews that mention candlelight and intimate seating. I told myself there were explanations. Client dinners for work. Lunches with her sister. Maybe she was planning a surprise for my birthday, though that was still 4 months away. I'm trained to follow evidence, not jump to conclusions. So I did what any analyst does when the data raises questions. I pulled the reports. 6 months of credit card statements, categorized and cross-referenced. I built a spreadsheet because that's how my brain organizes chaos. Date, vendor, amount, category, notes. The pattern emerged like a photograph in developing fluid. Every Thursday night for the past 2 months, a charge between $180 and $280. High-end restaurants, wine bars, that one steakhouse downtown where they dry-age the beef for 40 days. All on nights when I worked late, which during tax season meant most Thursdays. My firm runs extended hours from January through April. Everyone knows it. Everyone plans around it. Including, apparently, my wife. I cross-referenced her calendar, the shared one we both update religiously. Those Thursdays showed nothing. No entries, no notes, just blank squares that should have read book club or dinner with Sarah or something, anything that made the charges make sense. I checked her location history on our phone plan, the family tracking we set up after she got lost hiking 2 years ago. Every Thursday, her phone pinged from locations that matched the restaurant addresses. She was there. The card was there. But according to our life, she wasn't supposed to be. The coffee in my mug had formed a thin skin. I pushed it aside and leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking in the quiet house. It was the kind of silence that feels heavy, like the air before a storm system moves in. I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, the central air clicking on, the small mechanical sounds of a home that doesn't know it's breaking. I thought about Rebecca this morning, the way she'd kissed me goodbye before her sales calls, her perfume something new I didn't recognize. She'd been cheerful lately, lighter somehow, like a person who'd set down a weight they'd been carrying. I'd attributed it to spring, to the end of tax season approaching, to life finally easing up. Now that lightness felt different. It felt like the happiness of someone living 2 lives and preferring one of them. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus, my colleague, asking if I'd reviewed the Pemberton file. I typed back a quick confirmation and set the phone face down. Work could wait. This couldn't. I returned my attention to the spreadsheet, scrolling through the columns of our financial life. Grocery stores, gas stations, the monthly automatic payments that keep a household running. Normal expenses for a normal marriage. Except, scattered throughout like landmines were these other charges. The ones that told a story I wasn't part of. There was a charge from a florist. Not our usual place, the one near her office where she sometimes grabbed arrangements for client gifts. This was across town, a boutique spot with a French name. $85 on a Monday morning. I remembered that day. I'd left early for a breakfast meeting, came home to find tulips on the kitchen counter. She'd smiled when I noticed them, said she thought the house needed brightness. I'd kissed her and thanked her and gone to my office to prep for a client call. The tulips lasted a week before I threw them out. Now I pulled up the florist's website. Their signature arrangement started at $120. Tulips, according to their online menu, came in a simple wrap for $35. I sat with that math, turning it over like a coin. $85. Maybe she'd bought 2 arrangements. Maybe one for the house, one for something else. Someone else. I closed the laptop because if I kept looking I'd start seeing things I couldn't unsee. The afternoon sun cut through the blinds in sharp lines across my desk. I had 3 client calls scheduled, a mountain of quarterly reports to review, a partnership meeting at 4. My life was supposed to be predictable, controlled, the kind of existence where surprises came from market fluctuations, not from my wife's spending habits. But I couldn't stop my brain from doing what it does best. Analyzing. Projecting. Following the data to its logical conclusion. If she was having dinners I didn't know about, buying flowers that weren't for me, withdrawing cash for purposes she wasn't disclosing, then the variable I was missing had a name. Or would have one, eventually. Someone was sitting across from her at those restaurants. Someone was receiving those flowers. Someone knew more about my wife's Thursday nights than I did. I've worked with enough divorce attorneys to know how these things unfold. The money trail always tells the story first. Spouses think they're being careful, using cash, deleting texts, covering tracks. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. But the financial breadcrumbs remain, stubborn and factual, waiting for someone who knows how to read them. I'd helped lawyers build cases from credit card statements, shown judges timelines constructed from ATM withdrawals and hotel charges. I'd sat in depositions and watched people realize too late that numbers don't forget. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent my career following money to find truth, and now the money was leading me somewhere I didn't want to go. But analysts don't get to choose their conclusions. We follow the data. We report what is, not what we wish would be. Rebecca's car pulled into the driveway at 5:47 p.m. I heard the garage door grind open, heard her heels on the concrete, heard the door to the mudroom open and close. She called out my name, her voice bright and easy, the voice of someone whose day went exactly as planned. I stood from my desk and walked to meet her, my face arranged into the expression of a husband whose world wasn't tilting on its axis. She set her bag on the counter, kicked off her heels, and opened the refrigerator like she did every evening. Her routine was clockwork. Change clothes, pour wine, ask about my day while she started dinner. Tonight she wore a blue dress I'd seen before, pearl earrings, makeup still fresh despite a full day of client meetings. She looked beautiful. She looked like my wife. She looked like a woman I was just beginning to realize I might not know at all. "How was your day?" she asked, pulling out ingredients for what looked like pasta. I told her fine, busy, the usual tax season chaos. She nodded, said something about her sales numbers being strong this month, asked if I wanted red or white with dinner. I said red and watched her reach for the corkscrew, watched the easy competence of her movements, watched her be completely normal while my mind cataloged every charge, every Thursday, every hole in the story of us. We ate dinner at the kitchen island like we had 1,000 times. She talked about a difficult client, a new product launch, some office politics I half listened to. I made appropriate sounds, asked follow-up questions, played my part. The pasta was good. The wine was better. The conversation felt like something we were both performing, though maybe that was just me projecting. Maybe she was exactly as present as she seemed, and I was the one who'd left the room. After dinner, she loaded the dishwasher while I wiped down the counters. Teamwork, the kind of domestic choreography that develops over years. She mentioned something about girls' night on Thursday, said she'd probably be late, not to wait up. My hands stilled on the granite. Thursday. Of course it was Thursday. I kept my voice level when I asked where they were going. She said probably that new wine bar downtown, the one Sarah had been wanting to try. I nodded and said to have fun and felt the lie settle between us like silt in still water. That night I lay in bed next to her, listening to her breathe in the dark. She'd fallen asleep quickly, the way she always did, one hand tucked under her pillow. I stared at the ceiling fan's lazy rotation and thought about the wine bar she'd mentioned. I'd already seen it on the credit card statement. She'd been there 3 times in the past month. Twice on Thursdays, once on a Tuesday afternoon. The charges averaged $140. The kind of tab 2 people run up, not one woman waiting for friends who, according to the timestamps, never split the bill. I've never been the jealous type. I've never checked her phone, never questioned her whereabouts, never felt the need to verify her stories. We built our marriage on trust, on the assumption that we were both choosing each other every day. But trust is like a contract. It requires both parties to honor the terms. And somewhere in the past few months, while I was buried in tax returns and client demands, the terms had changed without my signature. Sleep didn't come. Around 2 a.m. I gave up and went back to my office. I pulled up the credit card account again, expanded the date range to a full year. I wanted to see when it started, when the pattern broke from normal into something else. The answer arrived in early November. That's when the first unfamiliar restaurant charge appeared. Then another in late November. By December they were weekly. By January they were every Thursday without fail, like appointments she kept more reliably than our own anniversary dinner. I opened a new tab and searched for one of the restaurants. Marcello's, an Italian place with white tablecloths and reviews that mentioned it was perfect for date night. Their website showed dim lighting, candles on every table, a wine list organized by region. I clicked through photos of couples leaning close over risotto, of hands touching across bread baskets, of the kind of intimacy that doesn't happen at girls' night out. Then I did something I'd never done before. I called the restaurant. It was late, they were closed, but their voicemail mentioned reservation policies. I hung up and called back the next morning at 10 a.m. sharp, when someone would actually answer. A hostess picked up, her voice professionally warm. I said I was calling to confirm a reservation for Thursday evening under the name Chen. She put me on hold. Soft Italian music played through the phone. When she returned, she said she didn't see anything under Chen for Thursday. Would I like to make a reservation? I said no thank you and disconnected. Then I called back, apologized for the confusion, said I thought my wife might have made it under her name instead. Rebecca Chen, I said, Thursday evening. Another hold. More music. When she returned, her voice had shifted to something knowing, something that made my chest tight. Yes, she said, we have Rebecca for Thursday at 7:30, party of 2. She'd requested the corner table again. Would I like to add anything special for the occasion? I managed to say no, just confirming, thank you. My hand was shaking when I set the phone down. Party of 2. Corner table. Again. The word again doing more damage than all the credit card charges combined. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This wasn't a blurred line or a bad judgment call. This was a standing reservation. This was a routine. This was my wife having dinner with someone every Thursday while I worked late, and doing it with enough regularity that restaurant staff recognized her name and knew her preferences. I sat in my office chair and felt something crack in my chest, a clean break like ice giving way. 7 years. We'd been married 7 years. Together for 9. I'd held her hand through her father's funeral, celebrated every promotion, supported her career moves, built this life with her brick by brick. And somewhere in the construction, while I was focused on the foundation, she'd started building a second structure I wasn't supposed to see. The anger came later. First was something colder, cleaner. Disappointment maybe, or recognition. The feeling you get when you've been solving for the wrong variable and suddenly the equation makes sense. All those cheerful mornings, all those affectionate goodbyes, all those nights she'd curled into me and whispered she loved me. None of it was technically a lie. You can love someone and betray them. You can be kind while being cruel. You can share a bed and a mortgage and a last name while giving your Thursdays to someone else. I thought about confronting her immediately. Walking into the kitchen right then, showing her the statements, demanding answers. But I've sat through enough depositions to know that approach fails. People lie when cornered. They minimize, deflect, turn the accusation back on the accuser. You worked too much, you didn't pay attention, you drove me to this. I'd heard every variation. And I wasn't interested in giving her the opportunity to rewrite history or paint herself as the victim of my neglect. No, if I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. Document everything. Establish a timeline. Remove all doubt. Financial analysis isn't just about numbers. It's about building an irrefutable case, showing the patterns so clearly that denial becomes impossible. I'd done it for clients facing audits, helped them demonstrate compliance beyond any reasonable question. Now I'd do it for myself. I created a new folder on my desktop, password protected, labeled innocuously as Henderson Audit 2024. Inside, I started building the file. Every restaurant charge, cross-referenced with my work calendar showing when I was at the office late. Every ATM withdrawal, mapped to her location data. Every unexplained expense, every new pattern, every deviation from the baseline of our normal financial behavior. I worked with the methodical precision I bring to forensic accounting, removing emotion, following only what the data proved. By noon I had a timeline that would make any lawyer nod with approval. November 7th, first dinner at Marcello's, $167. I'd been at the office until 9 p.m. that night, working on year-end projections for a manufacturing client. November 21st, second dinner, different restaurant, $201. I'd been at a firm dinner that night, a client appreciation event I'd told her about weeks in advance. The pattern continued through winter, gaining frequency, gaining confidence. Whoever he was, he'd become a standing appointment. Whoever he was, he knew my schedule as well as I did. I thought about that. How she'd know when I'd be working late, when coast would be clear, when she could slip away without raising questions. We shared a calendar. I put my client meetings in it, my late nights, my travel. I'd done it for her benefit, so she'd know when to expect me home, when to save dinner, when we could plan date nights around my workload. Now I realized I'd been giving her a roadmap. Here's when you can disappear. Here's when you're safe. Here's when your husband won't notice you're living a separate life. The documentation took 3 days to complete. I worked on it late at night after she'd gone to bed, early in the morning before she woke up. I pulled bank statements, credit card records, phone bills. I mapped locations, created timelines, built a narrative from pure data. When I was finished, I had a file that told the story of a marriage from the outside in. Dates, times, places, amounts. The skeleton of betrayal rendered in spreadsheet format. What I didn't have was a name. The credit card showed restaurants, not dining companions. The location data showed where she was, not who she was with. I could prove she was lying. I couldn't prove about whom. Yet. Thursday arrived like any other. Rebecca kissed me goodbye that morning, said she'd be out late for girls' night, reminded me there was leftover chicken in the fridge. She wore jeans and a silk blouse, casual but carefully put together, the kind of outfit that could go anywhere. Her perfume lingered after she left, something expensive I didn't remember buying her. I went to work, attended meetings, reviewed files, acted like a man whose world wasn't about to split open. At 3 p.m. I told Marcus I needed to leave early, family matter, nothing serious. He waved me off with the easy dismissal of someone who doesn't know he's witnessing the before times. I drove home, changed into dark jeans and a jacket, grabbed my keys. Marcello's was a 40-minute drive across town. I'd never been there before. Never had a reason to visit that part of the city, where the restaurants have valet stands and the price per entree matches my hourly billing rate. I parked down the street with a clear view of the entrance, my car positioned like I was surveilling a fraud suspect. Which, in a way, I was. At 7:22 p.m., Rebecca's car pulled up to the valet stand. I watched her step out, smooth her blouse, hand her keys to the attendant. She looked confident, relaxed, like someone arriving exactly where they wanted to be. She walked into the restaurant alone. I checked my watch and waited. 8 minutes later, a silver Audi pulled up. The valet opened the driver's door and a man stepped out. Tall, maybe 6'2", dark hair going gray at the temples. Well dressed in the way that suggests money without trying too hard. He said something to the valet that made them both laugh. Then he straightened his jacket and walked into Marcello's like he owned Thursday nights. I sat in my car and felt the last piece of the puzzle click into place. My wife had told him I never checked the credit card. She'd felt safe enough to say that, comfortable enough with him to discuss her husband's habits, confident enough in the deception to make jokes about my obliviousness. The financial analyst who's too busy analyzing other people's money to notice his own wife spending theirs on another man. The rage came then, hot and clean. Not the messy kind that makes men kick walls or throw phones. The focused kind that sharpens everything into clarity. I started my car and drove home, my hands steady on the wheel, my mind already calculating the next steps. She'd underestimated me. She'd assumed I was too buried in work, too trusting, too comfortable to notice. She'd banked on my inattention the way fraudsters bank on cursory audits. But I'm very good at my job. And I was about to show her exactly what happens when you lie to someone who reads financial statements the way other people read novels. The story was there, written in charges and timestamps and corner table reservations. Now I just needed to decide how to present my findings. I pulled into our driveway at 8:15 p.m. The house was dark except for the porch light on its timer. Inside, everything was exactly as she'd left it. Coffee mug in the sink, throw blanket folded on the couch, the small details of a life she'd walk back into later, expecting to find her husband exactly where she'd left him. Trusting. Unaware. Safely occupied with work while she occupied herself elsewhere. I went to my office and opened the Henderson audit file. I'd spent 3 days building it. Now I'd spend the next few hours deciding what to do with it. The anger had settled into something colder, more useful. Betrayal hurts, but data doesn't lie. And I had enough data to bury any defense she might attempt. The question wasn't whether she'd done it. The question was what I'd do about it now that I knew. I thought about tomorrow. About the conversation we'd have to have, the marriage we'd have to confront, the life that would shatter along clean, predictable lines. I thought about lawyers and mediators and asset division, about explaining to friends why we'd be splitting holidays, about becoming another statistic in my firm's divorce rate. But first, I thought about tonight. About my wife having dinner with a man whose name I didn't know yet but would. About the corner table they requested again. About the life she'd built in the margins of ours, funded by our joint account, scheduled around my work calendar, hidden in plain sight. I pulled up the credit card account one more time. The charge would post tomorrow, like it did every Friday after Thursday night. Another line item in the ledger of our ending. I'd watch it appear, watch the amount populate, watch the merchant name confirm what I already knew. Then I'd decide exactly how to present my findings. Because when you're a financial analyst, you don't just identify the problem. You quantify it, document it, and present it in a way that leaves no room for dispute. And my presentation was going to be flawless. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my office with the door closed and built what I do best. A case. Not the emotional kind full of accusations and hurt feelings, but the kind that holds up under cross-examination. The kind where every claim has a source document, every timeline has timestamps, every conclusion follows logically from evidence that can't be argued away. By 3 a.m. I had created a presentation. 17 slides, each one a nail in the coffin of our marriage. Slide 1 showed our joint credit card statement from November through April, with every suspicious charge highlighted in red. Slide 2 broke those charges down by category. Dining, $4,100. Flowers, $340. Cash withdrawals, $2,800. A grand total of $7,240 spent on a relationship I wasn't part of. Slide 3 mapped the charges geographically, little red pins clustered in the downtown area where none of our normal life happened. I worked with the precision of someone preparing for an audit defense, because in a way, that's exactly what this was. My marriage was about to be audited, and I was both the examiner and the victim of the fraud. Each slide built on the last, creating a narrative so airtight that denial would require rejecting mathematics itself. And Rebecca, for all her talents in pharmaceutical sales, had never been good at math. Slide 7 showed her location data overlaid on the restaurant charges. Every Thursday, her phone pinged from the same coordinates as the credit card transaction, with timestamps that matched within minutes. Slide 8 displayed my work calendar for comparison, showing every late night I'd been at the office, every client dinner that kept me away, every convenient absence that gave her freedom. The pattern was so clean it could have been choreographed. But the slide I spent the most time on was number 12. This one showed the Marcello's reservation history. I'd called back, pretending to be their accountant doing a year-end reconciliation for tax purposes. The manager had been surprisingly helpful, pulled up their system, confirmed that Mrs. Chen had a standing reservation every Thursday at 7:30 since early January. Party of 2. Always the corner table. Always under her name. When I'd asked if there were any special notes on the account, he'd mentioned that they always ordered the same wine, a Barolo that ran $180 a bottle. I thanked him, hung up, and stared at that information for a long time. A standing reservation. The same wine every week. This wasn't an affair in the messy, impulsive sense. This was a parallel relationship, maintained with the same regularity as our marriage, maybe with more attention to detail. Someone who orders the same wine every week at the same restaurant with the same person isn't sneaking around. They're dating. They're building something. The sun came up while I was formatting slide 15, which showed a simple calculation. If this pattern continued, she'd spend approximately $18,620 per year on this relationship, all from our joint account. That number represented roughly 15% of our combined annual discretionary spending. 15% of our life, redirected to someone else, and she'd expected me never to notice because I was the husband who never checked the credit card. I heard her car in the driveway at 11:47 p.m. the night before, had listened to her coming through the garage, kick off her shoes, pad upstairs in her stocking feet. She'd peeked into my office, seen me at my computer, said something. About me working too late again. Her voice had been warm, slightly wine-softened, happy. She'd kissed the top of my head and told me not to stay up too much longer. I'd said I wouldn't, kept my eyes on the screen, waited until I heard our bedroom door close before I let myself feel anything. Now, with the presentation complete, I saved it to a thumb drive and a cloud backup. I printed a hard copy, 43 pages of evidence that would survive any technology failure or convenient accident. I put everything in my briefcase, showered, dressed in my best suit. The dark navy one I wore for high-stakes client meetings, the one that said I was serious and competent and not someone you could charm your way past. Rebecca was in the kitchen when I came downstairs, already dressed for work in a cream-colored suit, her hair pulled back, makeup perfect. She was scrolling through her phone with one hand while holding a coffee mug with the other, the picture of a successful woman starting her Friday. She looked up when she heard me, smiled that morning smile I used to find comforting. "You're up early," she said. "Big meeting today?" "The biggest," I told her, and poured my own coffee. I could feel her watching me, some instinct maybe picking up on the change in atmospheric pressure. 7 years of marriage gives you a certain radar for each other's moods, and mine must have been broadcasting something because she set her phone down and gave me her full attention. "Everything okay?" she asked. I took a drink of coffee, set the mug down with care, and looked at her directly. "We need to talk tonight. Both of us, no distractions, no excuses. Can you be home by 6? Her expression shifted through several registers. Confusion first, then a flicker of something that might have been concern or might have been calculation. "Of course," she said. "Is something wrong? Did something happen?" "We'll talk about it tonight," I repeated. "I need to get to the office." I picked up my briefcase and walked out before she could ask more questions. I could feel her standing in the kitchen behind me, could imagine her mind racing through possibilities, trying to figure out what I might know or suspect. Good. Let her wonder. Let her spend the day the way I'd spent the last 3, trapped in a loop of questions without answers. At the office, I moved through my scheduled meetings on autopilot. A quarterly review with a manufacturing client who was worried about tariff impacts. A new business pitch to a tech startup looking for CFO services. A partnership meeting where we discussed bringing on 2 new associates. I participated, took notes, asked appropriate questions, and the entire time my brain was running parallel calculations about the evening ahead. Marcus caught me in the hallway around 3. "You okay, man? You've been off lately." "Just tired," I said. "Tax season catching up with me." He nodded like he understood, but his eyes said he didn't quite believe me. We've been colleagues for 6 years, friends for most of that. He's seen me stressed, seen me buried in work, seen me navigate difficult clients and impossible deadlines. But whatever he was seeing now must have been different enough to register. "If you need anything," he started, and I cut him off with a wave. "I'm good. Just need to get through this week." He let it go, but I could feel him watching me walk back to my office. I closed the door, pulled up the presentation one more time, clicked through the slides to make sure everything was still there, still accurate, still irrefutable. Then I rehearsed what I'd say, the opening line that would set the tone for everything that followed. I've found some irregularities in our household finances that need immediate discussion. Professional. Detached. The language of audits, not of heartbreak. I practiced it until it sounded natural, until I could say it without my voice cracking or my hands shaking. This wasn't about emotion. This was about presentation of findings. This was about showing someone the numbers and watching them realize they couldn't argue with arithmetic. I left the office at 5, drove home through rush hour traffic, used the time to center myself. I thought about my parents, married 42 years, still holding hands at family dinners. I thought about my sister's divorce 3 years ago, how she'd fallen apart in my living room and told me she never saw it coming. I thought about all the ways marriages end, some explosive, some quiet, and wondered which category mine would fall into. Rebecca's car was already in the driveway when I pulled up. She'd beaten me home, which meant she'd left work early too. Probably spent the afternoon the way I'd spent mine, preparing for whatever conversation was coming. I wondered what she thought I knew. If she'd convinced herself it was about something else entirely, some work stress or family issue or financial concern that had nothing to do with Thursday nights and corner tables. I walked in through the front door instead of the garage, a small detail that felt symbolic somehow. The house smelled like she'd been cooking, which was unusual for a Friday. Normally we ordered in or went out, too tired from the work week to bother with elaborate meals. But today the scent of garlic and herbs filled the air, and I found her in the kitchen wearing an apron over her work clothes, stirring something on the stove. "I made your favorite," she said when she heard me. "Chicken marsala. Thought we could have a nice dinner before we talk about whatever's bothering you." It was a good move, strategically. Create a pleasant atmosphere, remind me of good times, soften whatever blow she thought was coming. If this had been about anything else, it might have worked. But I'd spent 3 days building a case that couldn't be sweetened by mushroom sauce. "That's thoughtful," I said, and set my briefcase on the counter. "But I'm not really hungry. Why don't we just talk now?" Her hand stilled on the spoon. She turned off the burner, wiped her hands on the apron, and turned to face me with the kind of careful attention you give to unstable situations. "Okay," she said slowly. "What's going on, David? You're scaring me a little." I pulled out one of the kitchen island chairs and sat down. She remained standing, her back against the counter, arms crossed in a posture that looked casual but was anything but. I opened my briefcase and extracted the printed presentation, all 43 pages held together with a binder clip. "I've been doing some analysis of our household finances," I said, keeping my tone professional. "And I've discovered a pattern of expenses that don't align with our documented activities or stated plans. I thought we should review them together." I slid the stack of papers across the counter toward her. She stared at it like it might bite, made no move to pick it up. "David, what is this? What are you talking about?" "Page 1 shows our credit card statement from November through yesterday," I continued, as if I were presenting to a client. "You'll notice approximately 47 charges highlighted in red. These represent expenses at restaurants and establishments that neither of us discussed, that don't appear on our shared calendar, and that occurred primarily on Thursday evenings when I was working late." She picked up the papers now, her hands not quite steady. Started flipping through them, her face going progressively paler as she moved from page to page. I watched her see her own life reflected back in data points and timestamps, watched the reality of documentation settle over her like frost. "Page 7 cross-references your location data with the charges," I went on, relentless now. "Every Thursday night for the past 4 months, your phone has pinged from the exact coordinates of these restaurants at the exact times the charge is posted. Page 12 shows the standing reservation you've maintained at Marcello's since January. Party of 2. Corner table. Same wine every week." I could see her calculating, trying to figure out what defense might still be available, what explanation could possibly cover this much evidence. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. David, I can explain. I held up a hand. I'm not finished. Page 15 shows the total expenditure. $7,240 over 6 months, or approximately $1,200 per month. That's more than we spend on groceries. More than our utility bills. It's a significant allocation of our joint resources to activities and a person I'm not part of. She set the papers down, gripped the edge of the counter like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Her eyes were wet now, but I couldn't tell if it was genuine emotion or tactical tears, the kind some people deploy when cornered. How long have you known? She whispered. I've suspected for about 2 weeks, I said. I've known with certainty for 3 days. I drove to Marcello's last night and watched you meet him. Silver Audi, tall, graying hair, approximately 6'2". I'm assuming he's the same person you've been seeing every Thursday, though I haven't yet confirmed his identity. The last part was a small lie. I didn't actually need his identity for what came next, but I wanted her to know I had the capacity to find it if I chose to. Wanted her to understand that her secrets were only as safe as her husband's willingness to stay ignorant, and that willingness had expired. She was crying fully now, shoulders shaking, one hand over her mouth. I watched without moving, without offering comfort, my role in this conversation firmly established as auditor, not husband. The kitchen felt very quiet except for her breathing and the tick of the wall clock marking seconds of a marriage counting down to its end. It's not what you think, she managed finally, and I almost laughed at the cliché of it. It's exactly what I think, I said. You've been having an affair, funding it with our money, scheduling it around my work calendar, and lying to me about it for months. The only thing I don't know is why, and honestly, Rebecca, I'm not sure that matters anymore. The what is pretty damning all on its own. She slid down the counter until she was sitting on the floor, her cream suit probably ruining against the tile, her careful morning appearance completely undone. I didn't plan for this to happen, she said. It just did. He's a client, we started having lunch meetings, and it turned into something else. A client. That was almost funny, in a grim way. She'd weaponized her job, turned business development into personal development, probably wrote the lunches off as entertainment expenses while she was at it. The accountant in me wondered if she'd committed tax fraud on top of marital fraud, mixing personal relationship costs with deductible business expenses. How long? I asked, though I could calculate it myself from the data. I wanted to hear her say it. Since October, she whispered. 5 months. Almost 6. I nodded, pulled out my phone, opened the calculator app. 6 months. 26 Thursdays. Approximately 52 hours of her life spent with him instead of in our marriage, not counting the lunches, the text conversations I could now assume existed, the mental and emotional energy redirected away from us. It was remarkable, really, how much of a relationship you could build in the margins of another one if you were determined enough. Do you love him? I asked, and watched her face crumple further. I don't know, she said. Maybe. I don't know what I feel except confused and horrible and scared. Scared of what? Getting caught? Because that's already happened. Scared of losing what we have. Because Rebecca, we don't have anything. Not anymore. What we had was built on honesty and trust, and you've demolished both of those things for lunches and Thursday night dinners with a client whose name I still don't even know. His name is Andrew, she said quietly. Andrew Fletcher. He's a physician, runs a private practice, divorced. We met when I was pitching him on carrying our new pain management line. There it was. The name, the profession, the origin story. Andrew Fletcher, physician, destroyer of marriages, enthusiast of expensive Italian wine. I filed it away in the mental folder I was building, the one that would eventually become my divorce attorney's case file. Every detail mattered now. Every piece of information was ammunition. Thank you for being honest about that much, I said, and stood up. I'm going to pack a bag. I'll be staying somewhere else while we figure out next steps. I suggest you spend the weekend thinking very carefully about what you want, because I can tell you right now what I want. I want a divorce. I want to separate our finances immediately. And I want you to understand that the life we built together is over, not because I'm being dramatic or rash, but because you ended it the first time you lied to me about where you were going and who you were with." She scrambled to her feet, reached for me, her hand catching my sleeve. "Please, David, please don't do this. We can work through this. We can go to counseling. I'll stop seeing him, I'll do whatever you need." I looked at her hand on my arm, at the wedding ring she was still wearing, at the desperation in her eyes that might have been real or might have been fear of losing the comfortable life she'd been living while also pursuing something else on the side. And I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a vast emptiness where love used to organize itself. "Rebecca," I said gently, removing her hand. "You told him I never checked the credit card. You felt safe enough in this affair to make jokes about my obliviousness. You discussed me with him, probably complained about my work hours, maybe painted me as the neglectful husband who drove you into his arms. You made me the villain in a story I didn't even know I was part of. That's not something counseling fixes. That's not a rough patch. That's you making a choice, every Thursday for 6 months, to prioritize him over us." "But I love you," she said, and it sounded true and irrelevant at the same time. "Maybe you do, in whatever way you're capable of while also loving someone else. But love without integrity is just a word. And I'm done living in a marriage where the words don't match the actions." I walked upstairs before she could respond, went into our bedroom, pulled a suitcase from the closet. She followed me, stood in the doorway watching as I packed methodically. Work clothes, casual clothes, toiletries, the things I'd need for the next few weeks while lawyers drew up papers and our life together got divided into his and hers. She didn't try to stop me again, just watched with tears running down her face, and I wondered if she was crying for our marriage or for getting caught or for some combination of both. "Where will you go?" she asked when I zipped the suitcase closed. "Marcus said I could use his guest room," I told her. "I'll text you my lawyer's information once I've retained someone. I suggest you do the same. We can handle this civilly or we can handle it contentiously, but either way, we're handling it." I carried my suitcase downstairs, stopped at my office to grab my laptop and a few files I need for work. She stood at the top of the stairs, backlit by the hallway light, looking small and lost and like a stranger I used to know. "Is there anything I can say?" she asked. "Anything that would make you stay?" "You could have said something last night at Marcello's," I told her. "You could have not made the reservation in the first place. You could have talked to me 6 months ago when you first felt whatever it is you felt for him. There were 1,000 moments where you could have chosen our marriage, and you chose him instead every single time. So no, Rebecca. There's nothing you can say now that will change what you already did." I walked out through the front door, loaded my suitcase in the trunk, sat behind the wheel of my car and took a long breath. The house looked the same as it had that morning, same beige siding, same landscaping we'd paid too much for, same front door we'd painted together 3 summers ago. But it wasn't our house anymore. It was just a structure full of furniture and memories and one woman who'd gambled that I'd never notice her slipping away. I backed out of the driveway and didn't look at the rearview mirror. Some things you walk away from and never look back at, and this was going to be one of them. Marcus lived in a condo downtown, one of those renovated warehouse buildings with exposed brick and high ceilings. He answered the door in sweatpants and a college t-shirt, took one look at my face and the suitcase, and stepped aside without asking questions. The guest room was small but clean, a futon under the window, a desk in the corner, walls painted a neutral gray that felt appropriate for the liminal space I was occupying. I set my suitcase down and sat on the edge of the futon, suddenly exhausted in a way that went deeper than lack of sleep. Marcus appeared in the doorway with 2 beers, handed me one, sat down on the desk chair. "You want to talk about it?" he asked. "My wife's been having an affair," I said. "Thursday nights for the past 6 months. I found out through the credit card statements. Confronted her tonight. Moving out seemed like the obvious next step." He whistled low, took a long drink of his beer. "I'm sorry, man. That's brutal." "Yeah," I agreed. "It really is. We sat in silence for a while, the kind of comfortable quiet you can only maintain with someone who knows when talking makes things worse. I drank my beer and felt the adrenaline that had been sustaining me all evening finally start to drain away, leaving behind a weariness that settled into my bones like winter cold. The thing is, I said eventually, I don't even feel that angry. I thought I would be. I thought I'd want to throw things or yell or make her hurt the way she hurt me. But mostly I just feel tired. Tired of being lied to. Tired of wondering. Tired of living with someone who could sit across from me every morning and not tell me the truth. That'll come later, Marcus said. The anger. Right now you're in shock. Give it a few days, you'll want to burn her stuff in the driveway. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I'll just want to forget she exists. I finished my beer, thanked Marcus for the space, and went to bed even though it was barely 8. I lay in the unfamiliar room listening to unfamiliar sounds, traffic from the street below, someone's television through the wall, the gurgle of pipes when a neighbor ran water. It should have kept me awake, all this newness, but instead I fell asleep faster than I had in weeks. The sleep of someone who'd finally set down a weight they didn't realize they'd been carrying. I woke up Saturday morning to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and spent a confused moment trying to figure out where I was. Then memory reassembled itself and I lay there staring at the ceiling, processing the fact that I was 34 years old and living on my friend's futon because my marriage had imploded over credit card statements and Thursday night dinners. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Rebecca and a string of texts that started apologetic and progressively became more desperate. Please call me. We need to talk. I can't believe you just left. This isn't fair. You won't even give me a chance to explain. I deleted them without responding. I'd heard her explanation. It hadn't changed anything. Instead, I opened my laptop and started researching divorce attorneys. I needed someone who specialized in financial complexity, who understood asset division and retirement accounts and wouldn't let emotion cloud strategic decisions. I found a firm with good reviews, sent an inquiry through their website, got an automated response saying someone would contact me Monday morning. Then I did what I always do when reality becomes overwhelming. I worked. I had client files that needed attention, quarterly reviews that couldn't wait just because my personal life was disintegrating. I sat up at Marcus's kitchen table with my laptop and files spread around me, lost myself in balance sheets and cash flow projections and the orderly world of numbers that always added up the way they were supposed to. Marcus emerged around 10, made coffee, slid a mug next to my laptop without comment. We existed in parallel for a while, him reading news on his tablet, me analyzing a client's supply chain costs, 2 men in their 30s doing Saturday morning tasks that had nothing to do with the mess my life had become. Around noon, Marcus broke the silence. You should eat something. I'm not hungry, I said, which was true. Food seemed theoretical, something other people did. You're going to eat anyway, he said, already pulling ingredients from his refrigerator. I'm making omelets, you're having one, and then we're going to watch something mindless until your brain stops looking like it's trying to solve quantum physics. He wasn't wrong about my brain. Even while I'd been working, part of my mind had been running calculations. How to divide the house, whether to sell or buy her out, how to split retirement accounts, what our marriage was worth in purely financial terms. It was easier than thinking about what it was worth in human terms, in years invested and promises broken and the future I'd imagined that would never exist now. The omelet was good. I ate it mechanically, fuel for a body that was going to need energy for what came next. Lawyers and paperwork and the systematic dismantling of a shared life. Marcus found a cooking competition show, something blessedly mindless about people making elaborate desserts under time pressure, and we watched for hours while I let my brain slowly power down from crisis mode into something resembling normal human functioning. By evening, I felt steady enough to think about practical matters. I needed clothes from the house, needed my other laptop, needed a dozen small things I hadn't grabbed in my rush to leave. I texted Rebecca. I'm coming by tomorrow at 10 to get more of my things. Please arrange to be elsewhere. Her response came immediately. We should talk. Please. There's nothing to talk about yet, I replied. Wait to hear from my attorney. I turned my phone face down and went back to watching people stress about buttercream consistency, and tried not to think about my wife sitting in our house alone, probably texting Andrew Fletcher about how her husband found out and her life was falling apart. Probably looking for comfort from the same person who'd helped destroy what she was mourning. Sunday morning I drove to the house at exactly 10. Rebecca's car wasn't in the driveway, which meant she'd honored my request to be gone. Small mercies. I let myself in through the garage, walked through rooms that felt like museum exhibits of a life I used to live. Our coffee mugs in the sink. The throw blanket on the couch where she always curled up to read. Wedding photos on the mantel that would need to come down soon. I moved through the house systematically, gathering what I needed. More clothes, my other laptop, files from my office, the watch my father had given me when I made partner. I worked quickly, efficiently, not letting myself linger in doorways or get caught up in memory. This was asset collection, nothing more. In our bedroom, I opened my sock drawer and found an envelope I'd forgotten about. Our anniversary card from last year, the one Rebecca had given me with a handwritten note about how lucky she felt to be married to me, how she couldn't imagine life with anyone else. I read it once, felt nothing, and threw it in the trash. Words were cheap. Actions were the only currency that mattered, and hers had been telling a different story for months. I was loading the last box into my trunk when a car pulled up. Not Rebecca's. The silver Audi from Thursday night. I straightened up, closed the trunk, and watched Andrew Fletcher step out of his car with the confidence of a man who thought he belonged here. He was older than I'd estimated from a distance. Mid-40s maybe, fit in the way that comes from having money for personal trainers, dressed casually in expensive jeans and a collared shirt. He walked up my driveway like he owned it, stopped a few feet away, hands in his pockets. "You must be David," he said. His voice was smooth, practiced, a doctor's bedside manner deployed on someone else's husband. "I wanted to talk to you." "I don't want to talk to you," I said evenly. "You're on my property. Leave." "I understand you're angry," he started, and I held up a hand. "You understand nothing. You're sleeping with my wife, eating dinners on my credit card, and now you're standing in my driveway like you have any right to be here. I'm going to ask you one more time. Leave. Now." "Rebecca's really struggling with this," he said, as if that was supposed to matter to me. "She loves you, you know. She's torn up about hurting you." "If she loves me," I said, "then she has a funny way of showing it. And if you actually cared about her emotional well-being, you wouldn't have been taking her to expensive restaurants every Thursday while her husband worked late to pay for the life she was destroying. So forgive me if I don't take relationship advice from the person who helped her cheat." His jaw tightened. "You don't know anything about our relationship." "I know it started while she was married," I said. "I know it was built on lies and funded by joint accounts. I know she told you I never checked the credit card because she thought I was too busy or too stupid to notice. And I know you were arrogant enough to come to my house and try to justify it. That tells me everything I need to know about both of you." I got in my car before he could respond, backed out of the driveway while he stood there looking like someone who'd miscalculated badly. In my rearview mirror, I saw him pull out his phone, probably calling Rebecca to tell her the confrontation hadn't gone the way he'd planned. Good. Let him see what happens when you treat someone's marriage like a minor obstacle to be navigated around. Back at Marcus's place, I unpacked my boxes and tried to shake off the encounter. But it had clarified something for me. This wasn't just about Rebecca's choices anymore. It was about Andrew Fletcher thinking he could show up and smooth things over, could talk to me like a reasonable person while continuing to see my wife. The arrogance of it was almost impressive. That night I drafted an email to Rebecca with clear terms. We communicate only through attorneys going forward. No more texts, no more surprise visits, no more attempts at explanation or reconciliation. What we had is over. The only thing left is paperwork. I hit send and felt lighter immediately. Boundaries established, expectations set, the new normal beginning to take shape. Monday I'd meet with my attorney. Tuesday I'd change my banking passwords. Wednesday I'd start looking at apartments. Small concrete steps toward a life that was mine again, unencumbered by someone else's lies. Marcus ordered pizza that night, and we ate in front of another mindless show, and I realized this was what my life looked like now. Futons and takeout and the kindness of friends while I rebuilt from scratch. It wasn't what I'd planned. But it was honest. It was clean. It was mine. And that was worth more than any corner table at Marcello's would ever be. The attorney's office smelled like leather and old books, the kind of place designed to make you feel like serious matters were being handled by serious people. Janet Morrison sat across from me with reading glasses perched on her nose, reviewing the presentation I'd brought. She was in her 50s, had handled 3 of our firm's partner divorces, and came highly recommended for cases involving complex asset division. "This is remarkably thorough," she said after 20 minutes of silence. "Most people come in with suspicions and emotions. You've brought me a forensic audit." "It's what I know how to do," I said. She set the papers down and looked at me over her glasses. "Makes my job easier. With documentation like this, she won't have much room to argue about fault or try to claim you." Drove her away through neglect. "The pattern is too clear, too established. How much of your assets are joint?" "Everything except our individual retirement accounts," I told her. "The house, savings, checking, investment portfolio. We kept it simple when we got married. Thought it showed trust." "It did," she said. "Unfortunately, that trust was misplaced. We'll need to do a complete accounting of all marital assets, then we can discuss settlement options versus litigation. Given the evidence, I'd recommend we push for an advantageous split." She committed marital waste by spending joint funds on an affair. "That gives us leverage." I nodded, listening as she outlined the process. Filing timelines, discovery periods, mediation requirements. It all sounded mechanical and impersonal, which felt appropriate. This wasn't about emotion anymore. This was about unwinding a legal contract between 2 people who'd stopped honoring its terms. "One question," she said. "Do you want to pursue anything punitive, or do you just want this done efficiently?" I thought about that. About Andrew Fletcher in my driveway, about Rebecca's tears, about Thursday nights and corner tables and the $7,000 of our money spent on a relationship that wasn't ours. I could make this painful for her. I had the evidence to drag it out, to make her justify every charge, to depose Andrew Fletcher and make him squirm under questions about their affair. "Just done efficiently," I said. "I don't want revenge. I want my life back." She smiled slightly. "That's refreshing. Anger makes people do stupid things in divorce. Pragmatism serves you better. We'll file this week, start the asset inventory, and aim for settlement within 90 days. Sound acceptable?" It did. I signed the retainer agreement, authorized her to begin proceedings, and walked out feeling like I'd just made the first real decision about my future since Thursday night. No more reacting to what Rebecca had done. Now I was acting on what I needed. The papers were served to Rebecca at work, which probably wasn't kind but felt necessary. Keep everything formal, everything documented, everything at arm's length where emotion couldn't muddy the waters. She called me 17 times that day. I didn't answer. She texted asking if we could please just talk like adults. I replied through my attorney. That's what lawyers are for. 2 weeks later, we had our first mediation session. Rebecca arrived with her own attorney, a younger guy who looked uncomfortable with the evidence my team had presented. She wouldn't meet my eyes when we sat down at opposite ends of the conference table. She'd lost weight, I noticed. Looked tired in a way that makeup couldn't quite hide. The mediator walked us through the asset list. The house, purchased for $320,000, now worth $450,000. Equity of $210,000 after the remaining mortgage. Savings accounts totaling $87,000. Investment portfolio at $240,000. Retirement accounts kept separate per our prenuptial agreement. Total marital assets approximately $537,000, not including personal property and vehicles. Standard division would be 50-50, the mediator said. However, Mr. Chen's attorney has raised the issue of marital waste. Mrs. Chen, you spent approximately $7,240 of joint funds on an extramarital relationship. Mr. Chen is requesting that amount be deducted from your share of the settlement, along with an additional $20,000 in compensation for emotional distress and breach of marital contract. Rebecca's attorney shifted in his seat. That seems excessive. Janet didn't blink. My client has documentation of every expenditure. We can litigate this publicly if necessary, including deposing Dr. Fletcher about the nature of his relationship with Mrs. Chen and whether he was aware she was married when they began their affair. Or we can settle this quietly with the adjustment Mr. Chen has requested. I watched Rebecca's face go pale. She whispered something to her attorney, who nodded reluctantly. We'd like to counter with $10,000 in adjustment, he said. My client acknowledges poor judgment but feels $20,000 is punitive. 15, Janet said immediately. Final offer. Otherwise we proceed to discovery and deposition, and I assure you, that process will be far more expensive and uncomfortable for everyone involved. They took a break to confer in the hallway. I sat in the conference room drinking terrible coffee and watching the city through the window. People down below going about their normal days, having no idea that 8 floors up, a marriage was being reduced to line items and negotiated settlements. Rebecca and her attorney returned. We accept the $15,000 adjustment, he said. My client would also like to keep the house. Janet looked at me. Your call. I considered it. The house where I'd found receipts in cup holders, where I'd built spreadsheets while my wife lied about girls' night, where Andrew Fletcher had stood in my driveway like he had any right to be there. She can have it, I said. I'll take my equity share in cash within 60 days. We'll need to refinance to buy you out, Rebecca's attorney said. That's fine, I said. Not my problem to solve. We hammered out the rest over the next 2 hours. She kept her car, I kept mine. Furniture divided by rooms, nothing we couldn't replace. She took the wedding china and photos, I took my father's watch and my collection of first edition Grisham novels. The personal property negotiations felt absurd, haggling over who got the good blender and the expensive wine glasses, but apparently this was how marriages ended. In conference rooms, across tables, with lawyers billing by the hour. By the end of the session, we had a draft settlement. She'd get the house minus my equity payment, half the remaining liquid assets after the $15,000 adjustment, her car, and most of the furniture. I'd get my equity, half the adjusted assets, my retirement accounts, my car, and the freedom to never wonder what she was doing on Thursday nights. We have to wait 60 days for the divorce to finalize, Janet explained as we packed up. State requirement. But you're legally separated as of today, which means you can move forward with your life. Get your own place, open new accounts, start fresh. That evening, Marcus helped me look at apartments. We found a 1-bedroom in a new development near my office, modern and clean with none of the history the house carried. I signed a lease that night, paid first month and security deposit, scheduled movers for the weekend. Physical manifestation of the new chapter, walls that had never heard arguments or witnessed betrayal. The 60 days passed in a blur of logistics. Closing on the equity payment, which Rebecca secured through a refinance loan. Opening new bank accounts in my name only. Watching my half of our assets transfer into spaces she couldn't access. Forwarding my mail, updating my address at work, telling friends and family in carefully neutral terms that we were divorcing and I'd appreciate privacy during the process. My parents took it hard. They'd loved Rebecca, had welcomed her into the family completely. My mother cried on the phone asking what happened, and I'd given her the abbreviated version. She had an affair, we couldn't work through it, we're both moving on. I didn't mention the credit cards or the standing reservations or Andrew Fletcher's silver Audi. Some details parents don't need to carry. The final court date was anticlimactic. 10 minutes before a judge who reviewed our settlement agreement, confirmed we both understood and accepted the terms, signed the dissolution decree. Just like that, 7 years unmade by a signature and a stamp. Rebecca left through one door, I left through another, and we didn't speak or acknowledge each other. We were strangers again, legally and practically, two people who'd once promised forever and delivered significantly less. I moved into my new apartment with everything I owned fitting into one moving truck. Marcus helped me unpack, and we ordered Chinese food and ate it sitting on my new couch in my new living room that had never been ours. The space felt empty in a good way, like a blank spreadsheet waiting for accurate data. That night, alone for the first time in my own place, I opened my laptop and looked at my finances. Clean accounts, clear balances, every dollar accounted for and under my control. No mysterious charges, no unexplained withdrawals, no one else's Thursday nights bleeding into my Friday morning statements. Just my life, my money, my choices. I thought about Rebecca in the house we'd bought together, probably talking to Andrew Fletcher about how her ex-husband had been unreasonable and cold. I thought about the version of me she'd tell him about, the workaholic who never noticed, who cared more about spreadsheets than his marriage. Maybe she believed that version. Maybe she needed to. But I knew the truth, and the truth was simple. I'd noticed everything. I'd documented it all. I'd followed the numbers to their logical conclusion and made the hard choice to walk away from someone who'd stopped choosing me months ago. That wasn't cold. That was self-respect. I closed my laptop and looked around my apartment. Small, quiet, mine. Tomorrow I'd go to work, come home to a space where no one lied to me, sleep in a bed I didn't share with someone who kept secrets. It wasn't the life I'd planned. But it was honest, and after everything, honesty felt like the only thing worth building on. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "You good?" I typed back. "Yeah. I'm good." And I was. Not happy exactly, not yet. But good. Stable. Free. The kind of good that comes from knowing your account's balance, your data is clean, and the only person you have to trust is yourself. My wife had told him I never checked the credit card. She'd been wrong about that, wrong about a lot of things. But she'd been right about one thing without meaning to be. I was a financial analyst. And when you're good at reading numbers, you eventually learn they're telling you a story. Mine had been telling me for months that something didn't add up. I'd finally listened. I'd finally acted. And now I was exactly where I needed to be. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.